Welcome to Betrayal Stories. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it, and sometimes a single evening can change everything we thought we knew about ourselves and the people around us. Tonight's story is one of unpredictability, suspense, and events that began as ordinary but spiraled into a night I would never forget. That evening I found myself alone, sitting in a tiny, dimly lit hotel room with my stepson, Charles. My husband Adrian had been away for months working in another city, leaving not just his physical absence, but a subtle emotional void that I could feel, gnawing at me every day. His neglect, the way he seemed indifferent to my feelings, had made the nights long and lonely. I missed him, yes, but it wasn't only about missing him. It was the lack of attention, the subtle disregard, the feeling of being invisible in my own home. I had no idea that a simple plan to visit my father, asking Charles to drive me, would leave us stranded together in a room barely large enough to turn around. That night would push me through tension, frustration, and emotional challenges I hadn't anticipated, and by the end, it would change my perspective in ways I could never have imagined. The morning began like any other, yet an invisible weight pressed down on me. Looking into the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself. Tired, yes, but alive. I had strength in my eyes, a spark that refused to be dimmed by months of solitude. Adrian's absence had hurt, yet I felt a strange resolve. I was more than just a wife waiting for her husband to return. I was still a woman capable of handling unexpected turns, capable of navigating life on my own terms. In the kitchen, Charles was finishing his breakfast, his energy filling the room in contrast to my quiet tension. He was 22, young, impulsive, and charming, in ways that often skirted on reckless. I called out to him, urging him to practice his driving, reminding him gently that college was approaching and he needed to be prepared. His response, as usual, was playful, a teasing challenge about getting a new car for the summer. I waved it off, urging him to hurry. Inside, I imagined the journey ahead, not realizing that the day would take a turn neither of us expected. The drive began uneventfully. I settled into the back seat, scrolling through my phone while Charles hummed along to the radio, tossing out jokes and funny observations. The landscape passed by, a blur of green fields and empty roads. Suddenly, a loud screech cut through the car's quiet, followed by a complete stop. My heart jumped. "What's happening?" I asked, trying to keep panic from my voice. Charles's expression shifted from casual amusement to frustration as he pulled over. "I think it broke down," he muttered, pulling out his phone to check for service, only to find barely any signal. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, no help around, and the hours stretched endlessly as we argued, called mechanics, and even tried to fix the car ourselves. By the time we admitted defeat, exhaustion had settled into our bones. The only solution was the nearest motel, and we drove there with a mix of frustration and reluctant acceptance. At the front desk, Charles managed the conversation with the clerk while I stayed behind, tension coiling in my chest. Adrian would be furious if he knew we were stranded. Yet, strangely, I felt a sense of anticipation. Sometimes, life forces you into situations that make you confront aspects of yourself you didn't realize existed. That night, I had a feeling, would be one of those times. The room itself was a disappointment at first glance. Small, cramped, barely enough space to move, with a single bed and a flickering ceiling light that cast everything in a grimy glow. The air conditioning hummed weakly, ineffective against the heat, and the window offered a view only of the parking lot. "This is it," I muttered, disappointment dripping from my voice. Charles laughed behind me. "What did you expect, stepmom? A five-star hotel." His tone was teasing, his grin Infuriating, yet strangely comforting. Though I hated to admit it, the idea of being stuck here didn't feel entirely terrible. There was a strange sense of calm in knowing that for once we had no one else to rely on but each other. I need a shower or I'll pass out, I said, rubbing my neck, aching from the long drive. Go ahead, Charles replied, flopping dramatically onto the bed. Alone in the bathroom, I stared at my reflection, taking a deep breath. My hair clung to my skin from the heat, but my eyes still held that spark of life. Life had thrown me into a frustrating, unexpected situation. Yet, I felt a strange clarity. Amid the chaos, the tiny room, the discomfort, the uncertainty, it all pressed in. Yet I could feel myself growing stronger, more self-aware. Charles, despite his youthful impulsiveness, had grown in responsibility. He was no longer just the playful, reckless boy of my memories. He was capable, alert, and somehow his presence reminded me of resilience in myself. The evening brought the mundane tension of waiting for our next steps. I decided to go downstairs for dinner, hoping a brief change of scenery and a light meal would calm my nerves. The hotel restaurant was small yet cozy, offering a quiet reprieve from the confined room. I ordered a simple meal and a glass of wine, letting the soft clinking of cutlery and the muted hum of conversation soothe me. Outside, the sun had set in the hotel. Lights glowed softly, casting a serene, almost cinematic calm across the parking lot. I thought about Charles upstairs, restless and energetic, pacing the small room in frustration. There was an undeniable intensity in his youth, a liveliness that reminded me that life moves on whether we are ready or not. Dinner passed quietly, contemplative as I allowed my mind to wander, replaying the events of the day. Returning to the room, I found Charles sitting quietly, staring out the window. The night seemed heavier now, filled with anticipation and unspoken words. The car is going to be a nightmare to fix in the morning, he said, a trace of worry in his tone. I exhaled sharply. No. We'll manage. We always do. The night stretched long and uneasy, filled with arguments about minor inconveniences, moments of silence, and the restless pacing of a confined space. Yet, in that tension, something shifted. Each word, each glance, each sigh carried weight. Our awareness of each other's moods, frustrations, and vulnerabilities deepened. It was uncomfortable yet revealing. It exposed not only our personalities, but our ability to navigate conflict, make decisions, and adapt under pressure. Just when the monotony of frustration threatened to lull us into resignation, an unexpected knock on the door broke the rhythm of the night. A stranger stood outside, frantic, claiming that his car had been stolen and that he had nowhere to turn. Suspense gripped the small hotel room. Should we trust him? Could we even help? Each second felt like an eternity as we weighed our options. Charles, though younger, handled the conversation with surprising maturity, asking calm, practical questions while I observed, silently trying to assess the stranger's honesty. In those tense minutes, we became partners, navigating a minor crisis, each decision carrying real consequences. The night, once merely frustrating, transformed into a series of moral choices and ethical dilemmas, forcing me to confront fear, responsibility, and trust in ways I hadn't anticipated. Don't trust on every person.